Good evening. We're at the corner of Danforth and Logan, where a makeshift memorial has begun here. And this tight-knit community has come together to remember the victims of last night's mass shooting. Now, today we're learning more about the gunman who shot 15 people, killing 2 of them. He's now been identified as 29-year-old Vigil Hussein of Toronto. He suffered a gunshot wound during an exchange of gunfire with police. It's still unclear whether he was killed by police or by a self-inflicted wound. And this is where Vigil Hussein lived with his parents and siblings at an apartment on Thorncliffe Park Drive. Police executed a search warrant at his residence. Forensic officers carried out a number of boxes from the home, loading them into a van for further investigation. Hussein's family issued a statement earlier today painting their son as mentally ill while expressing their sympathy for the victims. It reads in part, "We are utterly devastated by the incomprehensible news that our son was responsible for the senseless violence and loss of life that took place on the Danforth. Our son had severe mental health challenges, struggling with psychosis and depression his entire life. The interventions of professionals were unsuccessful. Medications and therapy were unable to treat him. While we did our best to seek help for him throughout his life of struggle and pain, we could never imagine that this would be his devastating and destructive end." Toronto police say they're still searching for a motive for Hussein's actions. We caught up with neighbors of Vigil Hussein, one of whom did not want to be identified.
But I never expected it would be him, because we all see him around where we live, and he's really the most humblest guy you could ever walk into. He always asks other people how they are, if they have any problems, if they need any help. I was just shocked.
But he's a nice kid. I mean, like, I really, honest to God, I really shocked.
Because the thing is, we never anticipate, we never expecting that this guy can be violent, this kind of thing.
While the Special Investigations Unit has identified the shooter, they are asking people not to speculate on the 29-year-old's background.
We are going to look into the background of that individual. I'm quite certain that there will be a frenzy on social media about speculation about who this person is and what they belong to. I ask you to be cautious. We're at the very, very early stages, and we will conduct a thorough and complete investigation.
Now, an autopsy will be performed on Hussein's body tomorrow morning. Meanwhile, here on the Danforth, this vigil is just one way that the community is honoring victims. Earlier this evening at a local church, community members gathered for a prayer service and vigil for the shooting victims.
Well, we're in shock and disbelief at what happened, and we live in the neighborhood. I've lived here for almost 20 years, and it's shocking.
At Cavalry Church on Pape Avenue, just blocks away from where last night's shooting began, area residents, along with politicians, gathered to mourn.
I just came out to pay my respects. 2 families have lost their daughters.
One of the victims, 18-year-old Reese Fallon, is being remembered here as a bright young student.
She's very nice. She was beautiful. She was one of the nice people, very smart. She got into McMaster.
For those who knew the victims, tonight's service was a chance to honor the young lives taken too soon. For others, it was all about beginning the healing process.
That was a church hall filled with love, and many prayers were said for all the people, the first responders, the leaders of the city, but most of all for the victims. And it was just, for me, a very welcome relief after a very difficult day.
The crowd, a mix of families with young children, residents from this neighborhood and beyond, and members of local faith groups. No matter what their connection to this tragedy, all were here to share one message.
The community's grief is our grief, and their pain is our pain, and we mourn as they mourn as well.
As the police tape comes down on Danforth Avenue, many here say they'll continue to stroll these streets despite what transpired here just hours ago. They say they don't want their community to be defined by this horrific act.
I want to walk around my neighborhood. I made a point of shopping in the area today.
I think you have to continue a level of normalcy for sure. I'll just kind of be vigilant and watch out for each other.
As for what happens now to prevent more tragedies like this, Mayor John Tory says it's time to ask some tough questions.
And I think that we should just have a discussion about how we can do much, much better at making sure that these guns don't fall into the wrong hands. And I posed the question earlier today, you know, why does someone need to have a gun in the city of Toronto? And I can't think, aside from police officers and very select others, I can't think of a reason why people do. But I think it's a discussion we should have sooner than later.
And Mayor Tory remained here on the Danforth this evening after that vigil, walking up and down the street, speaking with people who were out on restaurant patios less than 24 hours after last night's attack. Now, a portion of the Danforth was closed for most of the day for the investigation. It has since reopened, and Chester subway station has also reopened on line 2.